much for participating in what I'm calling the F word in Icebreakers. This is, just a little bit of a hello, but also a warning, as I'm a big fan of GIFs, and there will be many GIFs throughout. So just a little disclaimer. Um, First, as a very brief introduction, as I think it's kind of important to get the real look at who's facilitating. My name's Ash Oliver. I'm a workshop designer and facilitator. I run my own studio called Foster, and I'm based in Amsterdam by way of Seattle, Washington. I moved here about 4 years ago from Seattle. And I work with clients across the globe. I'm a dog dad to my girl here named Fern. I'm a huge plant nerd. Tend to actually over 65 houseplants. And I love to cook. So I think probably because I'm a born and raised New Yorker, I have a big passion for pizza. So I've been experimenting with all the different styles of pizza making. And really, this is kind of a joke picture. If you've seen the J.C. Penney photo shoots, or Best in Show is one of my favorite movies. But it's a kind of a nice way of just introducing. So I hope that you find a chuckle in it as well. All right, to dive right into the agenda, we'll start with just kind of going through the objectives and the workshop agreements. The kickoff activities are just kind of a quick couple of activities here. And then we're going to spend some time in instruction, mainly talking about what makes a successful or a not so successful icebreaker. How to be able to think about icebreakers, what do you aim for, what's kind of the true intention and purpose behind these activities. And then I'm actually going to walk you through a kind of zoomed in version of a case study, just an icebreaker that I built from the ground up, and we'll kind of dissect that. We'll go through some example exercises that I put together specifically for today's session. We'll talk about some best practices, and then I have a closing activity and Q&A towards the end. All right, so quick workshop agreements. This is really just for you as participants to note that this is more of a lightning style talk, so time will move fast. Expect that it'll be a quick pace. It's okay if don't get to all of the exercises, or if it's your first time interacting with either Butter or a Butter board. It's okay if it's incomplete. Don't worry about it. Of course, respect everybody here today and keep an open mind. And if you could, save your questions for the Q&A session at the end. All right, so what's the deal with icebreakers? Look, some people really love icebreakers, and when I say icebreakers, I'm really using that as a term, but it goes by many names. Kickoff activities is actually what I use to describe icebreakers. Some call them, energizers or openers or intros. But the fact remains, some people love them, some people hate them. And whether you're a facilitator or you've been a participant in a session with icebreaker activities, there's really a great divide on these type of openers. So some would maybe use profanities to describe them. Some might call them fun. Others, maybe facilitators are, huge fans and are super fond and keen of them. So let's get a pulse on the room. This is an opportunity for you to engage with the new Scenes technology. I'm super excited to have built this entire presentation in Scenes. So you should be able to vote and participate in this poll. If you're a facilitator, answer based on how you use opener activities or kickoff activities, whether it's something that you incorporate every single time, if it's something that's kind of dependent, or if you really hate them. And if you're someone who is not necessarily a facilitator, but you've participated in these types of workshop sessions, feel free to answer based on how you would like to see them happen. If you enjoy working with them, if it's kind of dependent, or if you really dislike engaging with these activities. And there should be a way to engage in the poll, right? I'm not sure if, yeah, okay.
Yep.
I'm not seeing it come through on my side, but I'm assuming that that's coming through.
Yep. Press enter, or if you haven't engaged yourself, then just press the skip or press the end poll. I can end the poll. Yeah, now you
There
should
you
be able to
go.
see it.
Okay,
Yeah, there we go.
perfect. Okay, awesome. All right. So sometimes depending on the session, but mostly it's kind of a keystone part of every workshop. So I'm pleased to see that. It's funny to see that they are disliked so much that they never show up. So that's cool to see. All right. So thinking about the opener activities, the icebreakers, the kickoff activities that you've done before, this is a way for you to kind of sort yourself on either side. You can either be, on the flop or not. So, have you mostly seen or delivered icebreakers that you feel kind of missed the mark, or do you feel like, for the most part, you've either gotten feedback or the temperature in the room is such that you feel like it works for everybody, everyone's super engaged, and they're successful? And bonus points to anyone who knows what this GIF on the right is from. It's intentionally showing my pride for being a 90s kid. So, all right, we got some on the line there. We've got some that maybe weren't so successful, but for the most part, I think people are feeling like they're generally hitting the mark. Okay, very cool. All right, so let's get into some of the instruction then. There's a lot of discourse around icebreakers as I described, but I've really boiled it down to three key components as to why participants hate intro activities, and it's really based on these three factors. Participants feel most often that they're not relevant to the session topic or the workshop goals, right? A great example of this is when you bring in a bunch of participants that might be from different departments, but they all work in the same company, and you ask them to do roundtable intros, right? The majority, if not all, of those participants probably know each other. And if they're there for a retro, for example, it might feel a little disconnected to have them do a round of introductions. So it's really important to consider the opener activity as something that's going to be relevant to the topic at hand or the workshop goals themselves. The other thing that I see often, especially by facilitators, is that they're overly complicated. These icebreakers are over-engineered, they're super lengthy, there's a lot of instructions or several steps. People are getting confused or losing their way through. It just is not setting the right tone. And if it's not something that's going to be easily digestible and something that they can smoothly move through, not typically going to set the right expectations moving forward. And then the last one is the perceived value for the time and effort involved, right? So it might be something that is really relevant to the workshop goals. It's not overly complicated, but does it feel like it's worth the time to incorporate it and get that engagement? Oftentimes, participants might not feel like that's the case. And again, because these kickoff activities are so critical to setting the tone and temper for the rest of the workshop, if this is the sentiment that most of your participants are walking away from in the beginning, you're going to have a harder time getting them over some of the obstacles down the line when there's going to be more of an engagement or effort expected for some of those other activities. Ultimately, I think the biggest trap I see with facilitators is that they're not thinking about kickoff activities or icebreakers as a design exercise. If you do not design this activity, it will fail. Even leaders in meetings that might not necessarily be a workshop, these icebreakers are sometimes selected at random, or it might even be just based on their own preferences. And that really makes it feel like it's unintentional and it's not thoughtfully considered. So as facilitators, I would encourage you to think about your icebreaker activity as something to be purposefully designed. All right. So at this point in the session, I'd love to hear from a couple of participants in the audience. If you could come off mute, and if you're comfortable sharing your story, maybe being on camera, just walk me through either a fail story of your own in terms of an icebreaker that you tried to deliver that didn't go so well, or one that you participated in that didn't go so well? I love the little sound samples in butter. It's nice.
I think
I
Corey
have,
has a hand up.
let Corey go.
Yeah, go Corey.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
My audio is so bootleg. I don't like, I've been on the receiving end or in the audience or a participant in icebreakers where the thing starts at the crack of dawn, like earlier than the normal workday. And then they want us to do something where we have to like stand up, turn around, something physical when we're all like just in our chairs and we're drinking our coffee or whatever. And then they want us to get physical like an hour before the workday normally starts. So I just thought I started off with that. Sucks.
That is a great thing to call out. Yeah, thinking about the time of day is definitely going to impact the type of activity that might be seen as successful or not. That's a good one.
That was
Sherry, I
another
think you
one.
had one as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was part of one. It wasn't technically an icebreaker, but it was an activity that kind of acted like an icebreaker where it was a new team. I was part of a new team of facilitators to get a little meta there. And they had 50 people line up and they had us line up by when you joined the company.
Oh,
And I thought it actually went great, but a lot of folks later said that they felt like outed a little, like it was like, oh, I'm brand new. So it actually didn't set a great tone.
that's interesting. As you could probably see from my initial reaction, it reminds me of a summer camp activity, which sometimes I love, summer camp feelings for adults, right? I think it's great. But it's maybe a little bit too much of like the trust fall kind of scenario, where it's a little bit like what's the purpose behind here? And I could definitely see how that might feel like there's the old kind of established crew versus the new crew and kind of creating a divide there. Do you mind sharing like what the purpose was behind that? Was it just to kind of get an idea of like where the timeline was in the participants, or
And that's it, right? Like, what
you
was
know?
the purpose? I think the idea might have been because there were so many new people to welcome them. And it
Mm,
actually kind of, for some folks, they felt really uncomfortable. Like I said, I was new and I thought it was fun. So it just goes to show the divide, right? Like some people, and this is interesting. I'll add this because I think it ties to purpose is a lot of the new people were very young. And
mm.
I'm not that young. So I think they felt like the people who'd been at the company longer were older in duration and in age. So maybe I didn't feel as uncomfortable because, well, I've been around the block a few times.
Yeah, it's also I wonder like what did in the trying to line everybody up, did it feel chaotic or was it fairly smooth? I don't know how many
No,
participants
it
there
was
were.
totally chaotic.
Yeah, okay. Because we'll talk about one in a moment that leverages that kind of like frantic energy for good. But that's one of those things to be really careful about, right? It's both like you kind of have to know the profiles in the room that might not be a great icebreaker or intro activity for folks that are more introverted or are going to get overstimulated quickly. And it's kind of chaotic to figure out everybody in the lineup where you're supposed to stand. So that's a great one to call out. Thank you for sharing. Are there anybody else
I'm
in
seeing
the audience that want to share something?
Amanda in the barbecue.
Perfect. Yes, Amanda, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I was young and naive in my career and gathered a group together. And my icebreaker was a light prompt to discuss something frustrating. And the whole group was kind of like an airing of grievances kind of thing. So it was purposely to draw those things out. But it really just, there was so much negativity and it totally derailed future activities that I had planned to bring those things out. And in retrospect might have started on a lighter note or actually not had dug right into the topic that we were going to dig into, which is a very serious topic.
Oof. And if I might ask, do you notice that like as soon as like the first couple of participants started to share and like then
Yes, but then it was too late because it was this whole I did not do my due diligence with who was in the room, and I didn't realize the extent to which people were frustrated, and like the type of group or population that was gathered were like primed and very easily able to share, like, I don't know, just kind of blast their frustrations and specifics easily. So I was able to like jump in and curb like the length of everyone, and like move things along timing wise, but it was not the energy I was hoping to kick off this 90-minute session with.
Yeah, I could imagine. But a great story to share because I think that it would be logical as as a kickoff activity to start diving in. I can see how that would be relevant to the topic of the session, but definitely probably not the right energy for especially at the beginning. So thank you for sharing. All right. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate that. I think it's always helpful to get an idea of, what failures we can learn from other folks. So let's talk about what makes these intro kickoff activities successful. What you aim for. In my mind, the purpose of any kickoff activity is to set the tone of the session, provide an intentional warm up, and create the spark for continued engagement. Those are really the three key things that I look for when considering an intro activity. Now, obviously, this isn't an exhaustive list, right? They can be selected for other things like boosting creativity and encouraging out-of-the-box thinking. It might be, building rapport and trying to establish more of an inclusive environment for connection building, right? It might be more of a team building kind of activity. It might be looking at different activities for creating positive communication channels, right? If there's going to be a lot of discussion around some maybe more difficult topics. But they all really come back to these three things. It's setting the tone for the session, providing that intentional warm up, and making sure that there's like that spark for the continued investment for engagement. So let's look at a case study. I'm going to walk you through one of the kickoff activities that I created for an event at Miro a few months ago. So I'll give you the full lowdown on what this workshop session was about. So the topic was on inclusive design. It was an in-person workshop for, I think at the end, there were about 80 attendees. So it was definitely a very large group. But the other constraint and challenge with designing this workshop was that it was a really broad range of folks in the audience. So specifically, this was for out in tech. So it was LGBTQ individuals and allies, but it could be, HR and people team, marketing, sales, a lot of design, engineer, and product people. But when you have salespeople sitting with designers, these are two very different lived experiences professionally. So how do you talk about the topic of inclusive design and ultimately the goal of how to be able to bring back practical ways of using design as a mindset and design thinking specifically as a tool set, regardless of your role, but uniting all of those different profiles in the room. The activity that I'm talking about here was for just 10 minutes. And the goal was really just to create people for the groups that they were going to be working with for the remainder of the workshop, right? This was the entire intention of it, was just to form groups. But because we were talking about inclusive design and because there were so many different people in the room, I created what I call reverse bingo. And actually, this is a screenshot of the bingo cards that I personally created and printed out for everyone. And it's a little bit of a spin on this or that, or like our beloved BuzzFeed quizzes, right? Very quick to fill in. But really leverage kind of the diversity in the group and what that kind of person might be able to respond to, if they're a sweet or salty person, if pineapple should belong on pizza, if they're coffee or tea, how many languages they speak, these types of things. So the idea is, and the instructions were very simple. fill out your cards, and then look to pair with someone, compare the bingo cards. If you have at least 3 things that are not in common, then you can join as a pair and go to your next person or pair. And then you basically continue that process until you have made groups of 8. Now, when I was walking through the process of this, I was thinking, okay, now we've got all of these people shuffling around the room. How do I know when groups are formed? So I printed off the Mario star. Again, another kind of nod to my 90s childhood. And when a group was formed, they would come up and select the kind of the printed out laminated Mario star and sit with their group, right? So it didn't require them to hold their hand in the air or say anything. They could just kind of quietly select the Mario star. But why the Mario star? I am a really big fan of Easter egg effect, if you know what the Easter egg effect is. And I guarantee you that there were many people in this group that didn't know the intention behind the Mario star. But basically, the Mario star was to, it's a part of the game that suggests kind of like this power up. And by creating these very diverse groups with people that you don't have a lot in common, I basically was suggesting that the group powers up by its difference, right? So it was a kind of a nod. I could have put anything on that card to signal that they were ready for the next steps, but this was just kind of the way of intentionally putting these little Easter eggs into the activity. So ultimately, the unique attributes with this was that it was fit for purpose. The real intention was just to form the groups. It was designed specifically for this audience. It felt relevant given the people in the room and the variety of backgrounds and international folks that were there. It was clear, simple, and I believe memorable. And the other thing was that for any introverts in the room or the folks that, I knew there was going to be a networking session after the workshop, people could kind of use or leverage what they went through with these reverse bingo cards as prompts or topics to discuss as they went into networking. Networking can sometimes feel really overwhelming and people don't know where to start. So it was kind of a way of being able to have that come back at the end should they look to do it. So it carried some risks. It was, something that was new and folks hadn't gone through this before. And it was definitely something that was going to carry, a time constraint. But overall, we got a lot of positive feedback on the activity at the end. So, all right. I know there's a lot of facilitation nerds in the audience. I thought I would kind of break open the file folder, so to speak, and talk about my kind of tried and true examples for some kickoff activities that I've found really successful. And again, these aren't always, going to be the best fit depending upon the purpose, but I've broken them out based off of their intention. So for energy and kind of fun, this is another bingo game. I don't know why I'm obsessed with bingo, but another bingo game I created during the pandemic. I've seen this, spin off by lots of other people, so I'm sure I got the inspiration for it somewhere. But the game really is to kind of be an energizer and slightly competitive. It works great in a remote environment. The window obviously refers to the Zoom window, and basically you'll just play a few rounds of people getting up out of their seat and grabbing an item that matches the description, right? So, grabs a coffee mug that has something yellow on it, right? And again, like you can kind of determine how many rounds you want to go or how specific you want to make it, if you want to constrain it to a certain room or if you want to have it to be the whole house. But it's a really great, super quick way of just getting people out of their seat, showing the item, seeing the variations that are with participants, and it's usually a big crowd pleaser. The next one I actually got from AJ and Smart. This is a huge energy boost, and was similar to what Sherry was talking about in terms of like just kind of the kinetic energy in the room. So rock, paper, scissors, jam. Everybody knows rock, paper, and scissors, or if not, it's a very simple one to explain. But instead of it just being, kind of paired up rock, paper, scissors, instead it's a tournament style. So you line up the split groups in pairs, kind of in 2 lines in the room. This really only works for an in-person environment. And then the pairs will square off and do the best 2 out of 3 rock, paper, scissors. Now, the loser is going to be the cheerleader for the winner. So the winner is going to turn to the person next to them that just won, and those 2 losers are going to cheer on the winners. And then it's kind of snowballs from there. And then ultimately you get to the end, and there's 2 people facing off with huge crowds, supporting either candidate. And ultimately it's just a big kind of energy moment. Another great one, but for remote, is a gift tournament. This premise is to really take like an idiom or an expression. So for instance, keeping with my ice cream theme here, you could say like cherry on top, and then have the participants post a GIF that represents cherry on top. And then you can have everyone vote on what the best representation, the best GIF representation of that phrase is. This is also really great if you're working in a remote environment where folks are maybe a little less familiar with the tools. If they've never been in Miro or Mural, for example, if there's going to be voting activities that are going to happen down the line, it's a great way of kind of getting them familiar in a low stakes environment before you're going to do some activities down the line. For connection, my first job is super simple, but great for creating connection. It's kind of deceptively simple, but people really seem to get into it. So again, you could use this in a remote environment by using stickies. You could do this in person if it's, kind of writing it down on sticky notes, but just ask participants to write down their very first job and what they learned from it. And then they can either share that in pairs or with a broader group. You oftentimes find some really unique first jobs and some insights from those first jobs that are either relevant to the job at hand or just kind of purposeful for the entire group. This or that is something that I kind of already made mention of. It's just, kind of as it's described, this or that. It's just kind of a preference-based game. It works great for in-person or remote, and it's kind of can be personalized depending upon folks in the room, cat or dog, coffee or tea. It can be personal or not so personal, but it's great for getting people in the habit of making quick decisions and working within time limits. So it's a fun one for that. Where in the world and collaborative journaling, I'm going to save because we're going to do those together in a moment. But for thinking or drawing activities, kind of creative or out of the box thinking, getting participants ready for things like sketching, for example, which can feel very daunting for folks that maybe aren't used to that in their day job. I really like the sun, which is a way to you basically just like draw a circle, add 10 or 12 lines coming out of it, so basically the rays, and then you ask participants to write sun in the middle, and then they will write all of the word associations that they have off the rays. So individual kind of working alone together exercise, and then they'll compare the words with their group or partner, and then the group or partner small groups that they have with the most common words will win. If you've used or heard of story cubes, I won't go through the entire premise. It's pretty popular, but it's a great one for facilitators to kind of purchase and bring to their workshops in person. It's great for creative thinking and for improv. Draw toast. I could only add one image here, so that's why I chose this one. If you're not familiar with it, it's a famous systems thinking exercise from the TED presenter Tom Wojcik, who also created the Marshmallow Challenge, if you're familiar with that one. It's a really quirky design exercise that is great for systems thinking, but it's really purposeful for revealing insights into how people frame ideas and communicate visually and solve problems. And again, it's a great way of getting people in the habit already from the jump with sketching. And then the last one here is, what else could it be? This one is not so common actually, but it's a really easy one. It's kind of akin to Crazy Eights if you've done any kind of design thinking or design sprint workshops. It's like an ink blot test, but basically you'll have these abstracted, visuals and ask participants to write what they see, but instead of just stating the obvious of what comes to mind first, you're going to ask them to keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going. And it really helps to kind of keep the creative thinking going, but also like evaluating things to go past that first initial idea. So it's a great one for that setting. Again, not an exhaustive list by any means, but the point is really just to consider the exercise for what value it's going to bring to the participants and how that connects to the overall exercise and workshop goals. Okay, so where in the world are you joining from? I selected this icebreaker or activity because, of course, we're all from different points in the world and joining together remotely. So I thought it would be a great use of Butter's new functionality here. You'll be able to drop a pin in your approximate location, and you'll see that there's the ask for your name, your city, if you are comfortable sharing your LinkedIn profile, and your favorite restaurant in that city. I think we've got a lot of travelers amongst us. Would love some restaurant recommendations. I know I would, but also this will make sense towards the end because I'll be able to compile all of this information for folks afterwards, and we can connect with each other after the session and stay in touch. So I'll give you a few minutes just to make use of this cool new activity from Butter and pop everything on the board. And Jakob, if there's anything else you want to mention about this feature, feel free to chime in while we give people some time.
Yeah, so this is a pin on image feature. You see, it was actually the same feature that Ash used earlier for the this or that. What was it called again?
The flop or
flop or not.
Yeah, the flop or not. Yeah.
And you can see you can add you can add extra elements here. You can even add like images and stuff to populate this for instance, a map or something else, or use it as an energy check. And we've seen very creative uses of the pin on image feature already.
Yeah, I love that that GIFs are compatible. That was like one of my first questions I asked you when looking at the new product. So it's fun. Wow, look at the pins. This is great. Some folks from all over the world. I'll give you just a couple more minutes here.
Even a pro user tip, you can, instead of adding everything as one question, you could add like 3 separate or 4 separate questions here, and it would also align nicely.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. Yeah, I didn't know if it was going to create a separate pin.
No, it basically
so.
creates like a mini form when you create several ones, so you could like answer and then they're stacked up and stuff.
Okay, cool. Nice. All right, and I assume people will still have access to this if I advance the scene slide.
Yeah, I mean, they won't be able to plop stuff in anymore, but you can send this out afterwards, and people are able to access it.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'll give everybody just one more minute to finish up, and then
I love how everyone's from all over. You can see Pacific hasn't really woken up yet, but
yeah, probably not. Yeah.
Denson, I'm impressed with Hong Kong is pretty late.
Yeah, at the time. All right, very cool. Thank you, everybody, for participating. All right, and for our next and last activity together, this is called collaborative journaling. I'm really excited to do this with this group because I think we will all get a lot of value from it in the end, but it's super important to pay attention to the instructions. So please listen. I want you to think about your best kept advice for being a facilitator or running your own facilitation business. And in as much detail as possible, write in the Zoom chat what your answer is, but do not press send yet. I want to not encourage, kind of any passive, over the shoulder looking, or any groupthink. We'll just silently do this individually. Just don't press send yet. And then when I give you the green light, everybody will press send together. We'll give it, 2 to 3 minutes or so. Feel free to get started. But the goal here is to really share and receive advice. I think this is such a unique community that Butter has created over the years. I'm super excited to be here with everybody that's joined my session specifically. So I thought this would be a great way for us to share our thoughts and experiences. And I will afterwards gather all of this information together, and I will be putting together a mini digital zine for all of you. So I will put this together with all of the recommendations and make sure that it reaches you. So we'll give it a few minutes, and then I'll tell you when you can send it. I see people typing. Lovely, lovely. Thank you. Okay, 1 more minute. I want to finish up your best kept advice or secrets that you've hard earned. Doesn't have to be in relation to icebreakers. Like I said, anything about being a facilitator or running your own facilitation business. Okay. And in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, send. Oh, this warms my heart. I'm not going to look through everything now. I would actually encourage you to wait until I put together the zine for you. Of course, if you want to take a peek now, of course you can. But thank you all for participating. I'm going to leave you with some thoughts as a wrap up, just some best practices to instill as you move forward for any opener kickoff activity. Remember that the true purpose behind all opener activities is to be that setting of the tone, to encourage that engagement, and to connect with the workshop goals. The activities really need to be designed as components to the larger whole of the session. And if you ever find that you're in a tricky situation with participants, maybe some detractors, for example, giving participants a brief explanation of the purpose and how it's relevant sometimes is all you need in order to get their buy-in to participate. Be selective and intentional with your icebreakers or kickoffs. They're a really important part, and I think oftentimes get overlooked. These are for the participants, not for you. There's oftentimes a lot of ways that you could get a lot of value personally by selecting a certain icebreaker, but it's not for you or your benefit, it's for theirs. And personally, just as my kind of like 2 cents, I think we should, as a practice, just chuck out the term icebreaker. I hate the term icebreaker. And I like kickoff activity personally, but you could use opener, warm up, energizer, starter, quick exercise. I won't shame anyone for continuing to use icebreaker, but it might be a way of getting people to completely forget that they hate icebreakers.
This was me. Sorry, Ash. I actually
Oh.
just put this in here because could I ask everyone that put stuff in chat to actually put it in scenes and help actually create the scene so it's all saved afterwards? So there should be like a little add your answer a box there on the scene. and you can simply plop it in there and then click submit. And then
Okay.
the full scene is created with all that lovely information.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks for doing
That's
that, guys.
wonderful. Yeah. Well, it's lost in the Zoom chat void forever.
Oh, I thought that the Zoom chat would save.
Yeah, okay. I
save
was being
everything.
dramatic. I'm sorry, dude.
No worries. Okay, perfect. Okay, we've got a couple other people putting these in.
Thanks, guys. Being game.
Perfect.
So just
All
the
right.
founder, proud of this product.
So, what do you think the true F word in Icebreakers is? I'll leave you with that. Thank you so very much. You can find me on LinkedIn or at the email listed here. I really appreciate your time and engagement. Thank you so very much. And while we take some Q&A for the final moments here, I've got the kind of classic I like, I wish, I wonder here in the Butterboard. If you have any thoughts or feedback, feel free to put it in there and I'll take questions while you do.
This is where I'm super excited for a new feature coming next week, where we'll have the Butter Radio playing sweet tunes. Yeah.
That's great. I have a whole workshop playlist, so
Seriously,
it'll be
workshops
fun
are
to
not the same
tinker with.
without music. Yeah.
It's really not. Yeah. Very cool.
So I'm curious, Ash, do you tend to like have, though you showed, I don't know, 9 or 10, do you tend to keep those in your back pocket and you kind of reuse them, or are you always looking for new ones?
Yeah, I am kind of a collector at heart, I guess. So I do have kind of a big Rolodex, but I am very selective. Those are the ones that I find have had big impacts. Like people aren't usually familiar with them, or they just kind of are always successful. I've never had any of those go awry in my time, but um, I guess I do tend to, yeah, they're my top ones for sure. Were there any from that list that you've used yourself, or?
Yeah, the rock, paper, scissors one, I thought it was interesting that you brought up that frenetic energy. It definitely is super interesting. Although, believe it or not, I had a couple folks who like didn't know the rules, so it got a little crazy. Like, we need a referee. But there were some that I definitely used and I liked, but I appreciated that you tied it back to purpose because I think that's critical. And I'll be honest, sometimes I reuse them and don't think as much about the purpose. So this is really going to remind me of like, okay, let's tie it back to the purpose. Sometimes it's just like reusing ones because of the time. Like, I know I can do this in 3 minutes, you know?
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, I think that's always helpful when it connects in that way. I don't know if there's any other questions from the audience. I know we've got like a 10-minute buffer here just to make sure that we don't run into the next session. Feel free to keep adding in any of your thoughts on the Butterboard, but nice. Okay. Well, Jacob, I don't know if you want to hold space for 10 more minutes. I'm happy to do so.
Yeah,
Or you want to
honestly,
let people go.
just super happy to have you here, Ash. And almost just lovely, pretty great with all the interaction with the audience. Like you guys were amazing. I guess the topic also helped very much because it's just so relevant. Wanted to say just a few things. Firstly, I will reiterate, we're like trading, we're fighting for the number. Now we're fighting for the number 2 spot in product hunt. But like support, it's like every single piece of support matters. So big, pretty please go support. If you have team members, please send over the link and ask them to go support us and upvote us in product hunt. It just means a lot. If you so yeah, that's a super important piece. Then I want to mention the next upcoming sessions. So we've got a few coming. Let me see. Yeah, we've got 2 coming. We've got Said Saduk coming on setting yourself up in the scene, Zoom meeting smooth like butter, which is very much a training in butter scenes. And got that coming here. Let me just post it here in chat. Got posting the title and the link here. So that one's starting at 5, and then we've got another one starting at 5 as well, namely Lizzie Lecour from ADP List, who is talking about building global connections, one meetup at a time. So that's about community and inside ADP List's community program. Yes, Benson on the summaries on last exercise. I'm sure Ash will share it out. Actually, I don't. We've got the. I mean, let me just. I can do it straight away, to be honest. If I'm now stopping, and then I'm sharing out a view-only link here in chat as well. So this is a Butter Scenes view-only link with everything from this session, including the answers from the exercise.
Yeah, if everybody is comfortable with me sending it to you through Slack or through LinkedIn or an email, I do have everyone's registration. So I was actually going to send it to everybody that registered for the session, but I was going to create a nice little mini zine for folks, just as a little takeaway. So if you're open to it, then I will send it in the next couple of weeks.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, everyone, and looking forward to seeing you in one of the other sessions, either Said's or Lizzie's. And I think they're going to be pretty damn awesome, as almost as awesome as this one. So thanks again, Ash, and thanks everyone.
Yeah, thanks everybody. I appreciate you joining.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.